Never before has there been a president more influential than that of our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. Most Americans know Lincoln for the more popular facts like he was born in a log cabin, freed the slaves, and was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. But what did Lincoln do to get to office?
So Lincoln was this man who nobody really expected to see rise up and become the great president that he eventually did. He had a tall, awkward frame that just didn't exactly have the presence that most presidents usually do.
Lincoln's political career started at the age of 23 when he decided to run to represent Illinois in the House of Representatives. However, even though he attained some popularity during the campaign, Lincoln lost, finishing 8 out of 13 candidates running.
It's really rather ironic that Lincoln loses his first election. This great political leader, and just so much behind him, loses his first election. Even though this is a reoccurring appearance that we see throughout history with Lincoln, leading up all the way to his presidency.
After losing his first election in 1832, Lincoln pursued a career as a lawyer, teaching himself along the way. However, in 1834, Lincoln decided to give politics another shot, this time using his training as a lawyer to his advantage. Winning an election for state legislation, he ran as a Whig.
You know, it's funny. Lincoln ran for president as a Republican, but when he started his career, he was a Whig. And then, during his election, he was favored more by Democrats. So, this kind of shows how he could appeal to all crowds.
He shuffled around in politics until about 1846, when he was elected to the House of Representatives, serving one 2-year term. In Congress, Lincoln started collaborating to write a bill which would free the slaves in a few areas, but later abandon it. Perhaps history would see him pick it up later.
It's really quite philanthropical if you think about it, how passionate Abraham Lincoln was about ending slavery. I mean, no doubt it's from the upbringing of his father, who was highly against slavery.
In 1854, 6 years before he started his journey to repair the United States, Lincoln returned to politics to oppose the Kansas-Nebraska Act, an act that ensured that territories of Kansas and Nebraska would be allowed to vote for themselves over whether or not slavery should be allowed. Lincoln gave a number of speeches about it, beginning his route to the presidency.
This is just what I love about Lincoln. He comes out after being quiet in politics for about 6 years to repel against something that he just really cares about, and boy was he successful.
Lincoln rode the popularity he gained in 1848 when he decided to run against Stephen Douglas for the Illinois Senate. Stephen Douglas was known as the nation's most feared debater.
So Stephen Douglas would have been a very intimidating candidate to anybody who would try to debate him due to his master debating skills. But didn't faze Lincoln. Nope, not one bit. Not one bit.
Lincoln and Douglas went at it time and time again on various issues, mostly slavery. Even though Lincoln would eventually lose the election for Senate, these debates opened up the path for him to become president.
The debates between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas really set the tone for Lincoln as far as getting his policies, how he felt about slavery, out in the national stage. It really was the podium for him, essentially. Even though he went on to lose the election, it really was the biggest step he had into essentially becoming president in 1960, because everybody in the North approved of his policies about slavery, and the fact that he took on such a great debater in Stephen Douglas really showed his courage, his willingness, and it was just absolutely fantastically phenomenal.
And thus began his run for presidency. Lincoln announced that in the 1860 election he would be running for president for an essentially brand new party, the Republican Party. His support was overwhelming, and he won over the entire North, enough to win him the election.
The South was really upset by this. They felt that it was unfair. This was the first Northern president they had had in a while, and their immediate assumption was that he was going to put an end to slavery, and this just really upset them.
Now here's the controversy that came along with this election. Lincoln won every single northern state vote. However, he didn't win one southern state vote. In fact, he wasn't even on the ballot in some southern states, yet he still won, and that's where the South cried foul.
And thus began the most crucial part of American history, where a man would rid the nation of all of its evils and repair it at the same time. The presidency of Abraham Lincoln had begun.